Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Wobble Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we've had opportunity in the past to discuss um, Austria and its relationship to NATO. And ever since the induction of Sweden and Finland into NATO, we were kind of wondering at what point, I mean, since Sweden and Finland had been deemed as neutral powers, at what point will pressure grow to push Austria into NATO? Now, of course, Austria was always is a very peculiar case, but because it was a condition of the withdrawal of the occupation forces in 1955, a condition that it would be neutral. And it was enshrined in its constitution that it would be neutral. So
And it worked out well for the
it worked
Austrians.
out well, but nonetheless, NATO doesn't let things just lie there and unattended. NATO, has been pushing for getting somehow to get around all these issues and get Austria into NATO, because Austria is, after all, is a prime real estate. It's right slap bang in the middle of Central Europe, and NATO doesn't want to just let good
NATO
lands
doesn't like
disappear.
no white areas, no gray
No,
areas.
no,
That
exactly.
that, that look at they're doing nonstop pressure on Serbia, nonstop.
Non-stop,
Okay?
non-stop. And of course on and Republika Srpska as part of the Bosnia and Herzegovina. So this latest um, uh, discussion, debate about Austria being inducted into NATO was triggered by an interview given by Austria's foreign minister. Now, the way Austria works is, much like everywhere else in Europe, which is the party that wins an election is the one that is kept out of power. So like
Well,
the
in theory.
that's right. But so the Freedom Party, which won the election last year, is the party that was kept out of power. And the parties that didn't win the election, did very poorly, are in power. So the person, this Austrian foreign minister, she's represents a party that got, I think, 9% of the vote in the election, and she's the one who's now pushing for Austria to go into NATO. So she gave this interview recently in to Die Welt, the Axel Springer publication, and she parrots the usual NATO talk about Russia and so on. I mean, none of that is terribly interesting, but as you can see here, at some point the coffins will pile up in Russia, and then she's asked by the Die Welt reporter. The director of the Diplomatic Academy has suggested considering Austria's accession to NATO. Are you in favor? And so she says, her name is Beate Meinl-Reisinger. One thing is clear.
Keep in mind, and everyone, this is not like, hey, just a thought. Have you ever thought about? No, this is part of a propaganda drive, nonstop,
Exactly, non-stop.
wall to wall, 24/7. Okay.
Right.
I mean, this is not like, it's been considered, maybe we could, no, this is all BS. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's very, very important what you just said, is that it's a constant, it's a drumbeat. It's unrelenting. It's not like, oh, well, that's an interesting question. Let's have a sort of an academic debate in the university seminar room. No, this is an ongoing thing. NATO, it brings this up, and the more you keep talking about it, and the more you say, well, maybe it's not such a bad idea, the more it becomes acceptable, because they know perfectly well this is going to be very problematic because there is a treaty. This was a treaty signed by the four occupation powers.
And
It
you
was
got
enshrined in the Austrian constitution.
you regained your independence through
Yes.
this vehicle.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. That was the condition. You
Yeah,
would
okay,
not
well,
have got.
George and I have a couple of punchlines before this is all over. I'm not going to give it now, but uh, there's a real hard trick they're going to have to get around, and they probably won't be able to do it. I'm going to keep my cards close to my chest. Go ahead.
So Meinl Reisinger says one thing is clear: neutrality alone does not protect us.
Well, it has done a pretty good job to date. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, you went through the whole Cold War. Very, very nice. Um, is anyone threatening Austria? So this says neutrality does not protect us. Is anyone threatening Austria? From where? Where is the threat coming from? I mean, you got Hungary on one side, you got Germany on the other side. Where is the threat? Oh, it does not. Neutrality does not protect us. What protects Austria against the backdrop of an increasingly uncertain global security situation? So, you notice the NATO speak, increasingly
Okay. All right.
uncertain
Okay.
global security
All
situation.
right. All right. All right. George and I have seen this before, particularly with these people around Politico. Um, uh, this is not an interview. This is written. Nobody talks like this. No, I interview in one form or another. That's what I do for a living. Nobody talks this way.
Exactly.
Good, keep going.
Exactly. Increasingly uncertain global security situation and an increasingly aggressive Russia is investment in our own defense capabilities. Now, keep in mind, Austria spends 1% of its GDP on defense. 1%. It's amazing how it's got this 1%. Now she says,
And
well,
and look how it's protected it, George. 1% has protected you. Yeah.
but it says, well, we have to investment in our own defense. What does that even mean? Investment, I mean, it's a small country. If you go from 1% to say 1.5%, I mean, it's not going to exactly, change the global balance of power.
And well, you have very peaceful and non-threatening neighbors.
That's right. But also in partnerships. So we have to invest in our own defense capability, but also in our partnerships. You can see where all this is going in our partnerships. I am fundamentally very open to a public debate about Austria's security and defense policy future. Notice just what this verbiage. I'm very
Well, I mean,
fundamentally very open to a
I don't.
public debate.
Maybe it's German. I am fundamentally very open. I mean, who talks like that?
Well, you're right.
Most people say, well, yeah, I'm open to a public debate.
You're absolutely right. It loses something in the translation. I mean, things can sound okay in German. They don't sound okay in English. This is a translation from German. Um, Fundamentally, are very open to a public debate about Austria's security and defense policy future. While there is currently no majority in parliament or among the population for NATO membership, it's not just you have no majority, you don't have any. There is almost no support. It's like about 10% of the public wants to join NATO. So, but she says, well, there's currently no majority in parliament. When has that ever stopped NATO? There was never a majority in support of NATO in Finland or Sweden.
Well, if you're looking at barely double digit, then why would there be a debate?
Well, I think if this happens, there will be no debate. If this comes about, there'll be no debate. Um, or among for NATO membership, such a debate can nevertheless be very fruitful. So when they say debate, they means no debate. That means we're going to just repeat how important NATO is, and what are we going to call the people who oppose us? Oh yeah, Putin's agents. That's it. So the people who are opposed to this are working for Putin. And then this Die Welt says it would also be a debate about Austrian sacred cow neutrality. Notice how he says this in this sneering way. Sacred cow. It's not a sacred cow. It's your international obligation. That you wouldn't have an independent state if you didn't make this commitment. Sacred cow neutrality. And then Meinl Reisinger says, it's not as if I wanted to join NATO with flying colors. But we can't sit back and say, if we don't do anything to anyone, no one will do anything to us.
Why can't you say that? You just did.
Now,
That would be naive. No, no.
now, of course, what we know in the case is at the moment you join NATO, you get a target on your back. I mean, it's common sense. So where before you were neutral, you wouldn't have a target on your back. Now you do. So if we don't do anything to anyone, no one will do anything to us. That would be naive. The world has changed. But I would like to say explicitly, with the EU, we already have a partner who will protect us in an emergency. Now, that's a kind of a nice little giveaway, because, of course, when Austria joined the EU, we knew then that that's just a step forward into abandoning neutrality. It was just a one step forward, but once the EU, through the Treaty of Lisbon, and introduced that whole common defense and security policy, and then once the EU signed all these agreements with NATO, the EU and NATO increasingly became inseparable. And she admits it here. Well, actually, we're already in NATO. And, protect us in an emergency. What's the emergency? You're going to get invaded from Hungary? I mean, the Hungarians are going to come in. Slovenes, you're going to get invaded from Slovenia. With the EU, we're at the same time, we make a significant contribution to European security.
So you've paid your dues.
That's
Okay.
right. We deploy soldiers on numerous peacekeeping EU missions and do everything. We can have a good chortle about these peacekeeping missions.
Okay, well, this is a very important sentence. Why don't you start from the beginning
Okay.
again?
We deploy soldiers on numerous peacekeeping EU missions and do everything we can to support the common European security and defense policy financially, militarily, and politically.
Well, why is that, lady? Why is that?
Yep.
Because you're neutral.
Yes. Yeah. That's that. Yeah. So that's a,
Oh,
so
and okay. What about Austria as a honest broker? What about all of the conferences held in Vienna?
yeah,
Because it's a neutral
that's
country.
right. But
You know,
now, but
all
it's
of the
but
international organizations, they go to Vienna because it's a neutral
right,
country.
exactly. But what she is admitting here, this is remember he's just this diva reporter is saying, well, what about neutrality? And she's saying, well, I'm not exactly going to go rushing in because if you do it openly, the Austrians will say absolutely not. But more or less, we're already in NATO. We've been doing it step by step through our membership of the EU, and that we join through all these peacekeeping missions. We do everything we can to support the common European security and defense policy. Remember, that was the sticking point in Ukraine. That time when Yanukovych about the EU association agreement. It was in that agreement that was said, yeah, you're going to be part of our defense and security policy. I mean, yeah, that's exactly it. That was just the association agreement. That wasn't even, not even talking about membership of NATO. That it was in that agreement.
Yeah, that's the first date.
That's right. And so, we're already in this. In this respect, Austria's neutrality has already changed noticeably since joining the EU in 1995. So she's kind of opening, yeah, well, we're already changed. We're already effectively not neutral. So when you say Vienna is the center of all these organizations, I mean, it's already, it shouldn't be, but Austria has already vitiated its right to be hosting all these international organizations.
Any journalist worth his or her salt would say, well, if you're already in it, then why do you have to join it?
Well, but it's effectively.
You see my point.
I see your point, but I mean, what they're going to do, and I think this is where it's like, yes, if you're already in it, she's more or less saying, look, it's no big deal joining NATO because we're already in it. It's like it's like de facto. I mean, it's just not a big deal. There's no need to make a lot of fuss about it. I know Austrians are going to make a lot of fuss about it. They say, oh, we're neutral, we're neutral. That's what she's saying. But we're already in it. We're already not neutral. So she's admitting it. And that's why it's a way like, well, if we make that extra step to join NATO, it's not a big deal. We're already in it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the argument that was made incidentally in the Sweden-Finland cases. Is that,
yeah.
well,
Well,
what's the big deal? We're
yeah. So,
already effectively in NATO.
yeah. So another reason not to have the democratic will
Right.
tested.
But
Okay.
no, they never
Another
did.
way around the democratic process. This is
There was,
what
it
these
was
people do.
that's right. Not what in the only time there was ever a referendum anywhere on NATO membership was in Hungary in 1997. And what happened is that not enough people turned up. They couldn't get, I don't know, whatever, 30% of registered voters. So in theory, that should have pretty much canceled your NATO application because people just didn't show up. But nonetheless, Hungary went and joined NATO. Never again did NATO take any risk about having a referendum on membership because it would always either not enough people are going to show up or people would, hey, you never know what people are going to do. They're going to vote against. And so just in case anyone wants the
Okay, here we
reminder,
go.
there's the federal constitutional law on the neutrality of Austria. Article 1, for the purpose of the permanent maintenance of her external independence and for the purpose of the inviolability of her territory, Austria, of her own free will, declares herewith her permanent neutrality, which she is resolved to maintain and defend with all means at her disposal. In order to secure these purposes, Austria will never in the future accede to any military alliances, nor permit the establishment of military bases of foreign states on the territory. So there it is.
Pretty
So
clear.
that's in the constitutional. Now the other thing was so there was the constitutional. So then there was the state treaty, which they also that's you're going to be independent. But there was also one other thing, which was the Moscow Declaration. Now the Moscow Declaration came about because the Austrian leaders went to Moscow and they signed an agreement with the Soviet leaders promising neutrality. It's not easy to find the Moscow Agreement, but here it is. It's you can get it from. I got this from the CIA data bank. Soviet Australian Memorandum, April the 15th, 1955, and you can see here what was agreed upon in the course of conversations regarding the earliest conclusion of the Austrian State Treaty in Moscow and so on. And there was Molotov took part, Mikoyan, and then Bruno Kreisky, if people remember him. So here then is the agreement in the sense of the declaration already given by Austria at the conference in Berlin to join no military alliances and to permit no military bases on its territory. The Austrian federal government will make a declaration in a form which will obligate Austria internationally to practice in perpetuity a
In
neutrality of the
perpetuity.
type maintained
In
in
perpetuity.
perpetuity. Yeah, in perpetuity. A neutrality of the type maintained by Switzerland. That was key. They put that in there. That specifically that you're going to be like Switzerland. The Austrian federal government will submit this Austrian declaration in accordance with the terms of the federal constitution of the Austrian parliament for decision immediately after the ratification of the state treaty. The federal government will take all suitable steps to obtain international recognition for the declaration confirmed by the Austrian parliament. The Austrian federal government will welcome a guarantee by the four great powers of the inviolability and integrity of the Austrian state
Okay,
treaty.
before you move, everybody, see the number 4 is key.
Key, exactly.
Key.
Key,
It's key.
key.
By the four great powers.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so the four great powers, they
That's right.
still have to be in agreement for anything to change.
Exactly,
And it must
exactly.
be uniform. It must be all.
Exactly. They all have to
One country can have a veto. One
That's
country
it.
can
One country
veto
has a
it.
veto, and that which is exactly what the Russians have been talking about in the case of Ukraine. That's, yeah, we're all for guarantees, but that has to be, all of the great powers. No, 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 we just want NATO security guarantee. That's not a deal. But that's why the Austrian model is what the Russians always had in mind, that all great powers, given the strategic importance of Ukraine, then you can't just have a NATO security guarantee. But that's you're right here. That's the key, which is going to be the problem to get around for NATO and Austria.
Will welcome a guarantee by the four great powers.
Right,
Okay?
right.
Good luck getting around that one.
I agree. And then the Austrian federal government will seek to obtain from the governments of France, Great Britain, and the United States of America such a guarantee by the four great powers. The federal government will, after return of German assets in the Soviet zone of occupation to Austria, take measure which will exclude a transfer of these assets to the possession of foreigners, including that, blah, blah. And then it goes on, and I think that's it. And then the deputy chairman of the Council of Ministers, Molotov and Mikoyan, made the following declaration in the name of the Soviet government with regard to the declarations of the Austrian government delegation. The Soviet government is prepared to sign the Austrian state treaty without delay. The Soviet government declares itself to be in agreement that all occupation troops of the four powers be withdrawn from Austria after the entry into force of the state treaty no later than the 31st of December 1955.
So the state treaty that sees Austria return as an independent sovereign state, it is incumbent upon this agreement that George is showing us right now.
That's right.
The cause and effect, they're linked. You cannot de-link them.
That's right. So you have the state treaty, which is, which basically created the independent state of Austria in 1955. You have the constitutional change, that declaration of neutrality, and then you have the Moscow Memorandum. So it's going to be quite a tall order for Austria to get around all of this, but that doesn't mean NATO is not going to try. And then here's and blah blah again with this goes on. And then
go back one more real quick, George. Okay, the Soviet government is prepared to participate in the guarantee. Okay, no, we already had that one.
Well, that's exactly. It's prepared to participate in the guarantee of the four powers of the inviolability and the integrity of the Austrian state treaty, according to the model of Switzerland. So I think that's very, very important. I mean, they said that was the model that was going to be Switzerland. And Switzerland was guaranteed neutrality at the Congress of Vienna. So that goes all the way back, Congress of Vienna, and this is Austria. Now, one has to say, Austria really got a good break. I mean, this is a really, they got a very, very nice deal. I mean, it's not just that Hitler himself was an Austrian and spent his early formative years in Austria. A number of the key Nazis were Austrians. I mean, they played a disproportionate role within the Nazi hierarchy, but they managed to persuade the world that they were the first victims of the Nazi.
And also, this throws a wrench into a lot of very simplistic Cold War narratives. I mean, the Soviets, this was a thaw. Stalin had just recently died, and this was a new approach. Okay, to start calming tensions in the center of Europe, because one of the things that George and I have talked about a lot, and some other smart people, I would say, the West doesn't like to resolve things.
No.
Okay.
No.
The Second World War was never really resolved. That's why George and I put so much attention on this Helsinki process of the 1970s, because that gave us a resolution. Here, the Soviet government was stepping up and saying, "Hey, let's just take this piece off the board."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think that's right. Incidentally, one also has to say that the Soviets, did make a number of efforts to try to resolve the German problem. I mean, they were not at all happy with the way it was left as a kind of divided Germany. And they made a number of efforts before finally giving up on it. But I mean, there was the Stalin note, which I think has to be taken seriously. The Stalin's note in 1952, offering unification of Germany in exchange for neutrality. It was dismissed out of hand. I mean, there was no attempt was ever made to explore. It was just, oh, of course, this was just Stalin, causing trouble. But George Kennan, no wimp, he said this should have been explored. He
Yeah,
thought this was a
it
serious
should have been
offer.
explored because it happened in Austria.
Right. Yeah, it happened obviously, but there were attempts by the Soviets who thought this was not stable. This basically was not a stable situation at the end of World War II, and obviously the Soviets were very concerned about German revanchism and Germany being armed and used by the Cold Warriors in the United States, armed and used again against the Soviet Union.
How do you think the Soviet leadership and the peoples of the Soviet Union, how they reacted when West Germany became a member of
Yeah,
NATO?
exactly. That's exactly
And
right.
that debate has never ended, George.
No, no, I think it's a very serious debate. Anyway, so that was it. And then Medvedev wrote an article in RT, um, in which he was addressed this very issue by this woman, this just the Germany's foreign minister, about, well, what happens in the case of Austria. Now, Sweden and Finland, I mean, Sweden was never really, there was never really any formal agreement on neutrality. Finland is a more difficult case because there was the 1948 treaty between the Soviet Union and Finland, in which Finland had to commit itself not to join any military alliance that would be hostile to the Soviet Union and not to aid any country that is hostile to the Soviet Union. But for some reason, or maybe there isn't for some reason, in 1992 that was abrogated and there was a new treaty signed that didn't stipulate that Finland should not join any alliance that was hostile
Well,
to
who was in
Russia.
power? Who
Who was
was
in
in?
power? Exactly. I think it was it Kozyrev? Was he the foreign minister at the
Yeah,
time? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Who lives in exile and
In
disgrace?
disgrace. Yeah, in disgrace. Still pops up on TV now and then to denounce Russia. It can be nice. A former foreign minister denouncing his own country. Um, but that's how Finland got around it. Um, and so then Medvedev writes, now reason is giving way to herd instinct following Finland and Sweden, Austria's establishment, egged on by bloodthirsty Brussels, is fueling public debate about abandoning its constitutionally enshrined neutrality in favor of NATO membership. And then he says Medvedev argued that Austria's neutrality was a decisive factor in its selection as host to nearly 20 international organizations. He warned that NATO accession would undermine the spirit of Vienna and jeopardize Austria's ability to maintain balanced relations with diverse global partners. Any move toward joining NATO would also raise legal questions about the country's ability to alter its non-aligned status without breaching post-World War II treaties. And then this leads to the obvious conclusion. It is time to consider relocating international organizations to countries in global south and east, he said. And then he told Medvedev said in his commentary titled NATO Anschluss, a reference to the Nazi Germans' annexation of 1938. But said despite public resistance, Austria has gradually deepened military cooperation with the EU and NATO through training missions and participation in the Partnership for Peace initiative. Citing, Medvedev said, citing over 3,000 NATO military convoys and 5,000 alliance aircraft flights through Austrian territory in 2024 as evidence of creeping militarization. That's quite a lot. 3,000 military convoys and 5,000 alliance
Yeah.
aircraft flight. Um, and then Medvedev emphasized that Austria's neutrality is protected by the Austria's state treaty, Moscow Memorandum, and he argued that any move toward NATO membership would violate international law, specifically the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. And then we have former Austrian Foreign Minister Karin Knessel, who echoed Medvedev's legal interpretation, stating that Austria cannot alter its neutrality without unanimous agreement from all treaty signatories. Well, that's obvious. I mean, it's there. I mean,
That's right.
we
That's
looked at
the
it,
catch.
and there's no way to get around it.
That's the
Um,
catch.
so, but here you see, here's the Financial Times, which look at the headline. It says, "Why, quote, neutral, unquote, Austria does not want to be left out of EU rearmament drive." You notice how they're not even taking seriously that it's supposed to be neutral. Oh, well, they just put it in.
Well, I mean, also, I mean, again, these titles. Why neutral Austria does not want. Well, who does not want to be left behind?
Who?
Is it the public?
Well, that's
Is
like
is it the Euro elites? I mean, who doesn't want to be left behind? It's
even this.
just absurd. It's
Exactly. But that's what's so interesting about this quote debate unquote is there is no debate. There's no one in Austria wants to join NATO. This is all being done by elites who are in with Brussels. So you have the party, the most popular party in Austria, like the Freedom Party, which is a kind of like the alternative for Deutschland Party in Germany, which means you win an election and you're immediately kept out of power. And this woman is, her party is about some like 8 or 9% in the polls, and she's talking about huge changes that Austria is going to undertake, clearly in violation of its commitments and treaties. Oh, we're going to get NATO, 8 or 9%. I mean, who are you to be speaking on behalf of the Austrian people? But no one really pays any attention to this. That's why it's like it has this momentum of its own, and the least you do is pain. The least of all of your concerns is what the Austrians themselves think. So he says here, Austria's new foreign minister has thrown her support behind EU efforts to spend more on its own security. It's like Austria spends 1%. So that's a total red herring. I mean, that's what Austria, a very wealthy country, it's a very prosperous country, but spends 1% of its GDP on its defense. And it says, neutrality does not mean Vienna cannot be an important partner in strengthening the continent's defensive capabilities. And then Beate Meinl-Reisinger told the FT that Austria was, quote, reworking its security strategy and wanted to cooperate with its EU partners to shape a European defense union. That includes making use of the new 150 billion euro loans for arms fund. So Austria wants to be in on all of this, while reaffirming Austria's military.
Austria wants to go into debt
Yes,
funds. Okay, for arms. Okay, all
right.
right.
No, that's right. But that in itself is a very interesting how, just about every European country, their economies are in serious difficulties, even as they talk about how they're going to give more to Ukraine. So while reaffirming Austria's military neutrality, Meinl-Reisinger argued that this status should not be confused with political neutrality. So
Okay.
notice how she's always kind
Kind of fun. That's fun. I like that. Okay. So what's the difference?
That's right. There is no neutrality inside Europe. We are part of the European security and defense policy. And there you have solidarity.
Oh, so where's Austria's sovereignty? I must have missed a sentence
No,
here.
there's no sovereignty at all here.
Okay. Okay.
None. When I talk to my European counterparts that are members of NATO, all of whom are enjoy about the same popularity as her party does. They're my counterparts. Yeah, no following at all.
Yeah, the coalition of the hated. Yeah.
Exactly. If Article 5 is once questioned, you cannot go back to normal. So, I mean, what does she mean by if Article 5 is once questioned, you cannot
Yeah.
go back? Well, how does that, what does that got to do with you anyway?
I have no idea what's normal here.
Yes,
Being in a military alliance or being neutral. You can't
yeah,
go back to
that's
normal.
right. See, what she's trying, she's trying to find all kinds of Weasley words to find some rationale to get into NATO. I mean, that's her job.
Yeah.
That
I
she,
would just say to her, what's normal about the status quo?
that's right. Um, Now, Europe has to react to strengthen its autonomy when it comes to defense capabilities, and we will take part in this. She said Austria cooperates with NATO through initiatives such as the Alliance's Partnership for Peace. Um, the foreign minister said she had launched citizen forums to foster public dialogue on security, defense, and understanding neutrality domestically. Now, the moment you hear these are sort of buzzwords, and there's a lie coming up. These people are lying to you, they are deceiving you. Citizen forums. Oh, who gets invited to these citizen forums? What is this public dialogue? Can I take part in this? Um, and
Over the years, my connection with the Austrian community here and in Austria itself, none of them want to talk about these things.
no, 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 no.
Because what really irritates a lot of Austrians is the sanctions. Because Austria, as a neutral country, we got really a lot of perks, okay?
Right,
And so, they export a lot of agriculture. They're a good agriculture country, okay? For its small size,
right,
these are like Amish people. I mean,
right,
it's
right,
good, intensive,
right,
high quality stuff, and they're getting screwed left and right and center.
right,
Okay, and
right.
they don't want to talk about fostering public
No,
dialogue
no,
on
on
security.
security, defense, and understanding neutrality domestically. You could see this kind of this.
God, don't you feel like you're being pushed into a pretzel in that sense?
Exactly. You can see like Stoltenberg and Mark Rutte kind of, telling her this is how you have to talk.
We
Don't,
need Maloney right now to roll her eyes. We
yeah,
need.
exactly. That's but to roll her eyes. In other words, don't say Austria's going to join NATO. You can't say that because that's going to, it'll cause absolute outrage in Austria, and of course in Moscow. So start talking in this meaningless gibberish, citizen forums, public dialogue, security defense, and understanding neutrality domestically. No one knows what the hell you're talking about. So you're on safe territory. Just keep talking this gibberish, and we'll get there. But that's what I'm about to say. Well, do you want to join NATO? Well, we don't want to,
Oh, all right, here we go. Being militarily neutral means you're able to defend. Again, I'm not, I guess, a very well-educated person. I just don't understand this gibberish.
No, it doesn't mean anything. That's the whole point. It doesn't mean anything. For everybody who argues in favor of neutrality, this person should argue in favor of investing more in our defense capabilities. I don't even
Can
that.
you can you
No,
translate?
I don't. So she's saying, so she's attacking the people who advocate maintaining neutrality. So she's like, the way she presented argues in favor of neutrality. It's not you don't argue in favor of it. It's enshrined in the Constitution. It's a condition of your becoming an independent state. This isn't, somehow as if this is a matter that Austria alone can make a decide about. Austria cannot. It cannot, because of all of these documents, Austria alone cannot make, it can change the constitution, but you can't change that agreement you had with Moscow. You can't change that Austrian state treaty. So
Yeah, I mean, even if they did, then Russia has no reason to recognize the sovereign state of Austria.
no, no, not at all. Not at all. And then here, and then this is from Defense News. Austria is torn
No,
over.
they're not torn.
They're not torn.
They're not torn.
Exactly. Austria is torn over age-old question of neutrality and
No, it's not age old.
exactly.
Okay?
It's not
There are
age-old.
people that still remember it, okay? And I can bet you my bottom dollar, those that remember it say, yeah, this was a really good idea. I mean, we got off the hook like
Yeah,
the guys up north that they didn't.
that's right. That's right. Exactly. The age-old question. But they want to present it's
Yeah,
torn.
I'm sorry, George. Germany is still occupied,
Germany, exactly.
is still occupied by foreign
Right.
armies.
That's right. That's
Okay? Austria, woo! We got off the hook in 55.
that's right. Yeah.
It's not age old. It's
Right. Exactly.
people are not torn.
That's right. Exactly. They're not torn. Exactly. So they've just but this is the way you make stuff up. This is what the media do. They make stuff up according to the desires of the people who matter, the people in Brussels and so on. Oh, it's a torn. There's this debate. This intense debate taking place in Austria about NATO and neutrality. There's no debate. This woman who is his party is has no support at all other than 9% or whatever, is just parroting these NATO slogans, as if her speeches are written for her by Mark Rutte.
Yeah, well,
Keep
maybe he wants to be, they haven't had a woman run NATO, she's
Yeah,
pitching.
yeah, yeah.
She's pitching.
That's right. Um, yeah, it's always very interesting how these women, the Kaya Kalas, we had the Finn chick, and then we had the what's the name, who's now the president of the UN General Assembly, Alina Baerbock. And then of course we have Ursula von der Leyen. It's very interesting how these women get into these positions, these top foreign policy defense positions, in order to spout this mindless gibberish.
I don't know, George is sorry. I'm going to get myself some enemies here, but just few too many Germans. I'm sorry.
The comments, the key reignited debate about the country's future relationship with NATO and whether Vienna might be better off joining an alliance. The comments sparked fierce outrage.
Fierce, fierce.
Fierce outrage from parts of the political spectrum in Vienna. No, not from pretty much everybody in Vienna. Gallup polling from last year, 2 years into the Russian invasion of Ukraine, showed that less than a quarter of Austrians were in favor of joining NATO, while 74% supported maintaining the country's everlasting neutrality. That could be a problem. I mean, if you've got 74% who say, no, we want to maintain everlasting or in perpetuity, as that document said, then you have a problem. How are you going to get around that? Leave
Well,
aside
I
all these
think
treaties that you've signed. You've also got a public
how,
that
how,
isn't interested.
how they get all around it. Okay. Let's look at Moldova, everybody.
Yep.
That's exactly
That's how
what's
you get
going
around it. Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
That's right. You manufacture it. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, this is a crazy prediction, not even a prediction, it's just more of a snide comment. For somehow, in some way, 74% of the electorate won't be allowed to vote for some reason.
That's right. um,
Moldova, all over. This has got Moldova all over
it's got
it.
exactly. Um, and then it says, especially the extreme right. Oh, now we're coming to the extreme right
Yeah.
Austrian Freedom Party, which is way ahead in the polls, which has close ties to Russia. It has no ties to Russia. Close ties to Russia and President Vladimir Putin personally. Oh, personally. He has a personal tie to the Austrian Freedom Party. They clapped back hard. They clapped back hard, saying in an urgent parliamentary inquiry that Meinl Reisinger was acting, quote, as an extended arm of the Brussels armaments agenda. Well, that doesn't sound particularly clapping back hard. She's an extended arm of the Brussels armaments agenda. I mean, that
No,
obviously
no,
she
no,
is.
no lies detected there.
I mean, it's a very, I think, quite a weak statement. Members of the Freedom Party have been critical of European defense integration and of the Western efforts to support Ukraine in its fight against the full-scale Russian invasion.
Full scale, yeah.
Full scale. Amid an unprecedented budget crunch and drastic spending cuts in Vienna, defense spending continues to increase year over year. When that happens, that you often is very unpopular. So you're cutting back spending on things that people need, but you're increasing spending on stuff that people don't need.
That's creating a revolutionary moment, everyone.
Exactly. And Meinl Reisinger, now serving as Austria's foreign minister, is also head of one of the three parties making up the ruling coalition in Vienna. Her economic liberal NEOS party stands out from its coalition partners, the Conservative People's Party and the Social Democrats, for having a much warmer stance on NATO and advocating for a joint European army. It's very interesting. I mean, so she has this warm stance on NATO, and yet she gets the foreign ministry gig, and that's good. She's the smallest. Her party is the smallest of the three coalition members. It's a little like Annalena Baerbock, who insisted that she gets that gig. That's the slot that she wants, that foreign ministry.
And look what happened to German diplomacy. Anyway.
Exactly, the worst. Yeah. And then NEOS has also repeatedly urged discussions about the modern day relevance of Austria's everlasting neutrality.
Why is it in quotes? Why?
I don't know.
Why doesn't it just say modern day relevance of Austria's neutrality?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. But suggesting everlasting because it sounds silly. It sounds, and it's like, what a corny thing to say. Everlasting. Nothing is everlasting.
Yeah, like the First Amendment. It's not,
It's not everlasting.
everlasting.
That's right. Yeah.
Everlasting.
What was it? Tim Walz. You remember when he said something? The First Amendment doesn't mean that you have absolute freedom of speech. Oh, really? I thought that's exactly what it meant.
That's what it means. Well,
Okay.
Tampon Tim, he's a pretty thick guy.
He is, but no, First Amendment doesn't mean that. Oh, okay. A small country like Austria can only defend its interest in a common and strong Europe. Meinl Reisinger told assembled parliamentarians. You get a sense that, like a Baerbock, she's obviously an agent of other powers. I mean, whether it's the CIA or somebody. I mean, it's like, this is not a person who has any kind of following
No,
she's a creation of other powers.
And this Mina, right? How do you pronounce this?
Meinl Reisinger.
Well, she's just looking for her next job.
Yeah.
So that's all. That's the trend, everyone. That's how.
And she get it like the Finn chick got a nice little gig at the Tony Blair Institute. Lots and lots of money, lots of travel to nice places, and not too much work. So yeah, that's a very nice retirement. And Austria, which is already covered by the EU's mutual defense clause, a point that Meinl Reisinger is quick to point out, is part of a vanishing breed in the European Union. Only a handful of EU countries still maintain neutrality. And of them, Austria, with its population of 9 million, is the largest. Finland and Sweden, longtime neutral countries that maintain this policy throughout the entirety of the Cold War, famously dropped it to join NATO in 2023.
Oh, so the Austrians are just looking backwards. They need to look forward, right?
Right.
Okay. That's what it's saying.
Right.
They're not very subtle here.
No,
okay?
not.
I mean, and as I started out with George here, is that NATO doesn't like blank spots or gray spots.
No,
okay?
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I think it's going to be very difficult. I think it's quite challenging for them to get Austria into.
Oh, we're going to have a lot of fun with this one, George.
Yes,
Okay.
as a formal member of NATO. But I think they can do a good job at the de facto NATO membership, because how do you stop it? It just goes in creeping in there. It's part of, oh well, we have to, put the, and they're not permanently stationed. These forces, foreign forces, are not permanently stationed. They're just passing through. They're going from here to
Yeah,
there.
I heard that one before. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Remember, that was all part of the NATO Russia, what was it? The NATO, it was,
Oh, what was it called? NATO, Russia. It's not quite an agreement. It's more like NATO, Russia, not even friendship
it
treaty,
was
but
like format,
yeah, that's right. It's something like the NATO-Russian, yeah, agreement or something like, or partnership.
dialogue agreement or
Yeah,
something.
partnership, NATO-Russia partnership. It was 1997,
Right.
and then on this question, they said, "Oh
No
yeah,
permanently, no,
no permanent stationing."
no.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
As from 2014 to 2022, Ukraine was rapidly NATOized. Remember, everyone, why is it moving so slowly? In February of 2022, it was the largest military in Europe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that happened really fast.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's right.
No, but George, we're going to have a lot of fun with this one because it plays to our strong point. Showing their rank hypocrisy. Okay, the rule of law. Okay, international law. Oh, it's all rubbish to these people.
Of
They
course it is.
don't care.
That's
And
right.
they don't care what people think. Oh, they're 74%. Oh, we have to work on them. Oh.
That's
Well,
right.
yeah, you'll just disenfranchise them if
That's right.
necessary.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
they look what they're doing in Germany. Look what they're doing in Moldova.
yeah.
Look how they punished Georgia for
Yeah.
actually taking democracy
Yeah,
seriously.
yeah, yeah. No, it is, and of course, not just the rule of law, but the law on the sanctity of treaties. So they're going to have to find a way to get around this. It's going to be very difficult. I think they're going to consult their international lawyers, and they say, it's going to be awfully difficult to get around this. But we can just by pretending that we're not doing what we are actually doing. We're essentially getting Austria into NATO as a de facto matter. So we don't actually have to change the constitution because they're not going to be able to change the constitution. I think there's just no support for it.
Yeah, but doesn't it tell you, you have this essentially what is a minority government because the largest party is kept out of power. So I'm using it loosely, minority government. Collectively, of course, they have enough seats to rule, but every single party was a loser in that election. These are the people that want to be part of the club. This is part of the EU nomenclatura where they're saying we're being left out. But
Yep.
what about all the perks for us?
Yeah,
Just because we're not in NATO? Come on.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they'll say, all
Right.
right, you can be part of the food chain too. Okay,
And
swing it. We'll throw some money at you. We'll destroy anyone's reputation that is against you. That's what we do for a
that's
living.
right.
Okay,
That's right.
we
That's
have
right.
the media on our side.
Yep.
Okay, so it's give and take here. You do your part, and we'll let you be part of the club.
Right. No, absolutely. If you look at Meinl Reisinger, she is looks exactly as you would expect. Very nice looking. Sort of, looks a little like Kaya Kallas. And she's there to do what her masters told her to do. And basically she comes along, with all this meaningless verbiage, the goal of which is slowly but surely make it a reality that Austria is a part of.
A frog in a boiling
That's right.
pot.
And of course, it's what you say. It's very important. What they see as soon as they mention the Freedom Party, the largest party, by far the largest party in Austria. Oh, Putin. That's what you do. Anyone,
Slur,
Putin.
slur.
That's
This
it.
slur.
I mean, it's just as, we talked about this coming election in Moldova. It's just like, in other words, they know that this Maya Sandu is going to lose. I mean, it's like every time there's an election, they know she's going to lose. So they have to get all their big guns out.
Who was it? Tusk,
Tusk,
Macron,
Macron, and
and
Merz,
Merz.
the big three, the
Big
Weimar
three.
Triangle. And so they all trotted off to celebrate Moldova's independence. But they say, oh, we're showing, the young people of Moldova, that we're with them. No, they have to go there and say we're going to absolutely, steal this election because she's going to lose it because, like she would have lost all the elections if we didn't go in there to steal it. And so that's why they're expressing our solidarity with the Moldovan people, except, of course, those people in Moldova who intend to vote against Maya Sandu. So this is yeah, democracy values. That above all, it's values.
Austria is going to be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have the receipts, everyone. So send this video around. Okay. George and I gave I think, a really good review here.
Yeah.
The receipts are evident, they're obvious, they're historic, and uncontested.
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah, no, that's right. Uncontested. I don't think Austria should have been allowed to join the EU in 1995 any more than I can't remember what year Finland joined the EU, something around the same time. Sure, they shouldn't have because it was already a kind of a violation of neutrality. It was obviously there was just a step towards
Well,
but
that's interesting, and I don't want to delve into it now. And maybe it's a question we should discuss this upcoming week. Russia is acquiescing to NATO, EU membership of Ukraine. I don't want to talk about it now because we talked already along. But I think it's a very interesting debate, the pros and cons of it, because I don't know why Russia should agree to that. But
no, no, you can't do it. You
yeah, all
can't.
right. That's a good topic. Let's save it, okay?
Right.
Because it's a rich topic and
Yeah,
it's worth talking about.
yeah,
But again, this is just another example of, elite media,
right,
um, uh, um, you know, generating consensus. Is that this pesky thing about neutrality?
exactly. There's neutrality, quote in quotes.
Well, it's interesting, George. In our lifetime, neutrality was something that was good,
Yeah,
and now neutrality is something that is negative.
right.
You can't be neutral. You can't be
That's right.
neutral on this.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Exactly.
And all the while, you have the same European elites. Well, we're not letting the Israelis to this arms fair. Ha! Show how much courage we have. Wow. I mean, it's here at the same time these debates, quote unquote, are going on. Okay, and you're showing fortitude and solidarity, and Russia's, and then you look at well, we wish the Israelis would stop doing that. Just wish
That's right.
okay,
That's
we
right.
might pull a visa here or there, but what
Right.
are they doing about that? I
That's
mean,
right.
this is a clown show. It's a clown show. There's nothing. They have no coherent core values except for maintaining power and their wealth, and to be able to pass on their power and wealth to their snobby little children. That's all it is. This is a new serfdom. This is
Right.
all this is.
That's right. Exactly.
Sorry about the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
No
Right.
talk.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very funny because last Friday, Emmanuel Macron and Friedrich Merz had one of their summits, the Franco-German Council of Ministers summit in Toulon. And as they do whenever they have these meetings, they do this thing of calling each other by their first names. It's become a norm now, oh, my good friend Emmanuel, and so on. And so Macron, said, Merz very courageously, very, very courageously announced that he will no longer sign off on arms exports to Israel that could be used in Gaza. He didn't say, oh, he's going to stop sending arms to Israel.
Yeah.
No, no, that could be used in Gaza. And that was very courageous. I've never come across courage so
Yeah,
incredible.
well,
Wow.
European leaders have nothing to do with courage and integrity. What I think we should do, maybe we should have like a countdown. Which country, the UK or France, will plead for a IMF bailout?
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good one. Yeah,
It's,
yeah, right.
it's that's another story we should do
That's right.
this
That's
week,
right.
okay? Because they have plenty of money for Ukraine, but their finances, I mean,
Yep.
this is catastrophic. I mean, they've gone into the red zone. I mean, literally, okay? I
Right.
mean, they are in a such a catastrophic mess. And that's why, George, that's why Austria has to be part of NATO.
Exactly. That's right.
That's why we have to support Ukraine.
That's
You know
right.
why?
All right. Yeah.
Because they don't want to talk about their public finances.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. All right. We'll
Absolutely.
talk about that. Okay.
All righty, everybody. That's our wrap here for Sunday. Three good ones. Tomorrow, live stream, 10 o'clock
Back at
Eastern.
10 a.m. Eastern time, and then Tuesday for my solo 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then you got to think about the dogs, because the dogs are kind of, already, mulling their next step, violating all kinds of treaties that they may or may not have agreed to. So, we don't want to create a sort of serious problem. So if you have any money lying around, just pick it up, like a big fistful of dollars, and right into the tip jar. See, that's, he's saying, yeah, that's exactly it. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and we might get them into a more positive frame of mind. It's very hard. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.